Okay, let's now take a look at implementing our likes repository. And we're going to need to inject our data context in here. So we'll use the primary constructor approach again. And I'll say data context and call it context. And then for our void add like method, pretty straightforward. We're just going to say context.likes and we'll say add and pass in the like. And the delete like is equally simplistic. So we'll say context.likes and delete or remove like. And then we need to get the current user like ID. So this is going to be an async task. And inside here, we're going to return and we'll say await and context dot likes. And then we'll specify where. And we will say x goes to x.sourceUserID, that's equal to the current user ID. And we're going to select and say x goes to x.targetUserID, and then we'll say to list a sync. And that will give us a list of just the target user IDs that this user, the current user, has liked. And you'll see how we'll use that soon in this section. And then we've got our get user like. Again, pretty straightforward, this one. So we're going to make this an async task. And we're going to return await, and we'll say context.likes, and we'll use the find async method. And our primary key in this case is made up of the source user ID and the target user ID. And then we've got the significant one, which is to get the user likes based on the predicate. So inside here, we need to do a bit more work. And we'll say var likes equals, and we'll say context.likes, and we'll say as queryable. And then, because we've got a few different options here, we'll create a switch statement for this. And we're going to switch on the predicate. So inside here, we'll say the first case is going to be liked. And we're going to return await likes. And then we'll specify where. And we'll say x goes to x.sourceUserID. That's equal to the user ID. We'll then select, and we'll say x goes to x.targetUser. We're only interested in getting the member back that this user has liked. And then we'll use AutoMapper so that we can project effectively. Our target user is going to be an app user. So when we use projection like this, we're selecting the likes based on a filter. In that case, the source user ID is the user that's doing the liking, and the target user, of course, is the user being liked. And then we're selecting that target user. So at this point, we're working with the app user, and we want to map this into a member DTO. So let's go up to the constructor, and we'll also inject iMapper into this as well, and call it mapper. And then scroll back down, and we'll say project to, and we're going to project to a member DTO. And then we're going to pass in the mapper and the configuration provider, and then we can use to list a sync. And then we need to take care of the case for liked by. And inside here, to be slightly lazy, I'm just going to copy this one because it's going to be very, very similar. And in this case, instead of where source user ID, it's going to be target user ID that's equal to the current user ID. And we're going to select the source user. Otherwise, it stays the same. And the default case we're going to use for mutual likes. So both users have liked each other. So we're going to need to get hold of the like IDs for the current user to start with. So we're going to say var liked IDs equals await, and then we're going to get the current user like IDs and pass in the user ID. And then we can return await, and we'll say likes, and we'll say where, and we're going to say x goes to x dot target user ID, that's equal to the user ID, and double ampersand, and then we'll say like IDs dot contains, and the x dot source user ID, and we're going to select the source user, so we'll say x goes to x dot source user, then we're going to project to, and we're going to project to the member DTO and pass in mapper and configuration provider, and then we're going to say to list a sync. And that covers all of our cases. So this one's a trickier one. So we need to first of all get a list of our current users like IDs, and we're going to see if that list contains the source user ID. And for each one of those that it does contain, we're going to select and return that source user, but also only if the target user ID matches the current user ID. And that effectively gives us our mutual likes. And then we've got one more to go. So I'm going to say async task and save changes, and we're going to return await and context and save changes async that's greater than 0. So that takes care of our repository methods, and in the next lesson we'll take a look at the controller endpoints for this functionality.